I'm glad that you guys are getting together. Really a good card you have coming up at Caged Aggression 31. And it's going to be really exciting. And now it's a 2-night event, May 7th and 8th. And we appreciate you being on the show. Mike Goodwin from Cage Fanatic. And, talk about the event. I did summarize kind of some of the stuff that I thought was really important in my article. I don't know if you get the chance to see it, but I did like an MMA recap, regional MMA recap. So, some important fights that happened that weekend. And, just talk about it.
It was just awesome. A lot of people have asked me a couple of things specifically. They say, man, I don't know how you do it. How the hell are you doing 3 nights in a row? How are you keeping up and all that? But I mean, realistically, I started it really mid-December. So I had my full 3 months to build that thing out and really put the best fights together that I could and promote everybody correctly. And I just think it showed, man. It was just such an awesome weekend. Every night had great fights. I've seen a lot of these guys and girls fight before many times and in many different shows, especially now that we're branching out. I really try to watch as much footage as I can when I'm matchmaking. But I feel like, I don't know if it's how we present the fighters, but I feel like when they fight for us, there's just a little something extra. They bring a little something extra, man. So whatever we're doing, I don't know what the secret sauce is, but I hope we could keep doing it because the fights were just incredible.
Yeah, definitely. And I wanted to, talk about a few of those fights. And, from night one, we had 2 guys I had interviewed on my show. And Blake Builder and James Dunn, they both came out with great performances. Of course, James Dunn, predicted that he would get that finish. And boy, did he do it against Luis Santiago Rivera. What a knockout that was. And then, obviously he backed up his words.
Yeah, that was crazy, man, because, you watch the first 2 minutes of the fight and, nobody in the building's thinking Dunn's going to win except for him. He was taking a lot of nasty shots. And hats off to Luis, man. He came out here and I really can't wait to have him back. He has a lot of potential. He had never faced a loss before in his entire career. So, you don't really know how somebody's going to respond to a loss. And I talked to his coach afterwards and he's like, man, he's so hurt. And he just wasn't used to it. So I have learned one thing, man. If there's any motivation, when somebody takes their first loss, a couple things happen. Either it really messes them up going forward, or they come back an even better fighter. And I think Luis is going to be even better than we saw the first time. It was a great performance from both guys.
For sure. I mean, it's almost one of those things that would James Dunn be ready to turn around and fight again. I was wanting to see if you would have an announcement for him for this card, but obviously nothing yet. Nothing for this weekend.
Broken hand.
Oh yeah, that's right. And I know he did have that cut as well.
Yeah.
That was kind of like a hidden cut or something. Like he got cut in the first round. It wasn't like a cut prior to the fight.
Yeah.
Right? It was like it happened in the first round, and that was nasty. So I don't know if it was a suspension off that, but like you just told me, it was the hand, huh?
Yeah. Because I mean, our event is 5 weeks, so I was able to cover the 30-day suspension, the medical suspension, but he needs probably, I don't know. Last I talked to him, a couple months at least. Yeah.
So it's going to take some time before we see him back in the cage. Also talk about, from that night, we saw Brandon Jenkins, that trained at Team Top Gym Syndicate MMA in Las Vegas. Yeah. And he was fighting Aaron Mitchell for the 165-pound Cage Aggression Catchweight Championship. And great performance for both of them. Jenkins gets the win, declared. This was also declared, I think, fight of the night. And now Jenkins is 14-7.
Yeah, that's right, man. That was one of those 2 guys in really, really good shape. So they were able to go the full 5 rounds, 25 minutes, all stand up. I really thought Mitchell, when I worked with him in the past, he fought another striker like Jenkins, and right away he took him down and he took all his tools away on the feet. So I really expected to see the same thing, but he didn't actually try to take Brandon down until the 5th round. And when he did, he actually had success with it. But obviously from a fan perspective, I mean, 5 rounds of just back and forth, it was great. And I really think that, like, Mitchell, he recently moved out to Jackson Wink, and he hasn't been there that long. And, when you take somebody with his talent, if he had more time out there with that gym, man, he's going to be a force for sure.
Definitely, maybe you'll bring him back for the rematch eventually. And, it was really great to see. That was on day 2, actually, that Brandon Jenkins fought. And then the co-main event of day 1, we saw Blake Builder take on Kane Luger, fight that featured 2 of the top prospects in the Midwest. Blake ended the fight in the first round, inverted triangle, crucifix, or Americana. And I feel like his relocation to California a couple of years paid off. Now 4-1-1.
Yeah, he's a very methodical fighter, and I was talking to his management company. They were, really, really trying to get him back on this card. It just didn't work out. The matchups have to make sense. And we were really working for a while, and we put out a couple offers, and the opponents didn't like it, or their managers didn't, or coaches. Okay. And, and then I even threw out like an extremely experienced guy, but that didn't really make sense where Blake was. No, man, I wish him the best, and hopefully we can get him back in here or up to a bigger show. But he's so calm and methodical in his approach that you almost don't even see it coming. So he's very, very good. Very good.
Definitely. Yeah. Another exciting fighter that really, on night 1 was, him and James Dunn. I think they both stood up. And then, of course, on the undercard for night 2, we see Trace Engeckels. He moved to Arizona, trained at the MMA Lab, unanimous decision over Wesley Powers. And I think he had 3 more fights on his record than Engeckels, who's now 2-0 as a pro. Pretty good fight, huh? Pretty good performance.
Yeah. I always try to, a lot of fighters, they say that one-liner, I'll fight anybody, right? I'll fight anybody you put in front of me. Now, I love that. I love the heart. But I think there's a better approach to that, because there's levels in the sport. So, Trace, he actually made his pro debut with us, and super quick fight. And, I believe in moving up the talent and and the opponents, taking the right steps, not just going right into the toughest guys. And so I thought this was a step up in competition with Wesley Powers. Obviously, he took him the distance. Trace has incredible wrestling that everybody knows about, and he was able to withstand that and fight through the entire fight. But Trace's wrestling is just really incredible, man, and he's very dominant. It's very heavy base and very dominant. So he sticks with that and keeps evolving his game. And in the other areas, he's going to be another one of those guys we see in a bigger show.
Yeah, definitely. Illinois native, making that step to go to the top gym and train. And then, day 3 of the triple threat, we saw UFC veteran Kenny Robertson take on Wisconsin native Dante Shiro for the Caged Aggression MMA welterweight title. And of course, Shiro knocked out Robertson in the second round, his first title defense. And we hadn't seen Robertson in quite some time, but Shiro looked good in that one.
Yeah, that's how I kind of broke the fight down, was, Kenny being out for so long. However, 9-time UFC vet, fought some of the best in the world and beat them. So you don't just forget how to fight, you don't forget those skills, but he had been out for a while where Dante was kind of shooting his way up. And I thought, man, this is really going to tell me where both of these guys are at. And I think it showed, man. Dante was just more dominant. And I really think he's on his way up.
Oh yeah. He's been featured at LFA prior to this as well. So yeah.
He even fought for one. He even fought for one championship. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow. The pretty seasoned pro coming out of Wisconsin. And then the co-main event, we had, of course, Nelly Thompson take on Josh Neal, and Neal got that knockout in the second round. Pretty big win over Thompson, who was doing pretty well prior to this loss.
Yeah, that actually, that fight, it wasn't that it surprised me, because both guys really came in shape, ready to go. Stylistically, the matchup was great. He got him with a kind of a jumping flying knee. Yeah. And after he hit him, you know, of course I'm right there, and he hit him flush with the knee, but then there was this kind of pause where I think it registered, like Nelly was like, man, that was a big one. And then he just dropped him. And, you know, that's a big win for Josh because, and I've got him right back in, you know, 5 weeks later, and I didn't expect him to actually fight again. I just kind of brought it up with a different opponent. And, man, he's just ready. He's ready for bigger shots, bigger opponents, bigger shows. And, you know, like I always say, if I can help these guys get to those bigger shows, it's a win-win for both of us.
Definitely. I think he's an Illinois native as well. So, yeah.
Correct.
Great to see, Thompson really come out there. And, I mean, Josh Neal come out there with a big win over Thompson. So that was, Caged Aggression 30. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add to that, but those are the fights that I felt were, highlighted, that I felt were really needed to be told,
Yeah. I think the only other thing, man, is like the other thing people had asked me was like, man, aren't you so glad it's over? And it's weird because I compare it to like summer camp. And when you first get dropped off at summer camp, you're kind of nervous and you don't really know anybody. And you're like, I don't even know if I want to do this, man. And then by the end of summer camp, you're crying. You don't want it to be over.
Right.
You're going to miss everybody. And I felt that way. Like at the last fighter meeting on the third night, I was like, man, it's over after tonight. So in a weird way, it was all kind of a blur and a buzz and all of that. But I didn't want it to end. Fortunately, 4 weeks later, here we are in fight week again.
Definitely. And yeah, let's talk about, what's coming up. I know May 7th is a huge card. You've got a couple big fights on there, including the main event, which is Eric Shelton, for the 125 title against RilleyDutro. And how do you feel about this one? Eric Shelton, of course, is the veteran of UFC.
Man, it's such a magical fight for so many reasons. But the problem is what I've learned at the local regional level, you kind of have a demographic in a certain mile radius. So sometimes if you promote a fighter that nobody in this radius has ever heard of before, they may not see it as such a big fight. They might not realize the credentials that this guy has behind him. Man, for me, like, it's our first guy from Hawaii on the show, which is pretty awesome. Wow. Riley is no joke, man. He's just like Eric in so many ways. And, when I talk to Eric's main goal is to try to get back to the UFC. And in order to do that, he's going to have to fight guys like Riley, guys that have the ability to beat him, guys that are looking for that same exact thing that Eric's looking for. Sure. And that's why this matchup is so perfect for each other. I mean, they have virtually almost the same everything as far as wins and losses and style and size and all that. The difference is Eric has been there and he's fought some of the best in the world. So, Riley's got a long trip, but the thing that Eric, he really took this seriously, man. He went back down to Florida to American Top Team. He's been there for 6 weeks, missing his family, his kids. Right. He knows what it took to get to the UFC, so he knows what it's going to take to get back there. And he's got to fight a guy who is doing exactly the same thing. He's training in Maui right now, finishing up his camp. And, man, like we talked last time, like, I get to host this fight, man. It's awesome. Yes. It's awesome.
Definitely. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of attention on this one. A big title fight for Caged Aggression. Darren Albee, I got to talk to him about his fight with Marty Vancil. He's a 1-2, but he's a guy that basically, has shown a lot of potential. He's trained now at Stanford MMA, down in Florida, and Vancil comes in with a great amateur record, making his pro debut. So this is a big heavyweight fight.
Yeah, I love it, man. I've been trying to work with Darren for a long time. It's just never, the stars haven't aligned, whether it be opponents, all these different reasons. Sure. And his 1-2 is super underrated because his pro debut was like a week notice Bellator fight against a 5-0 guy. And, again, just from like the fan perspective, like I see why he took the fight, of course. And he actually almost dropped the guy in the first round, but I didn't think that was the best move for his pro debut, but heck, Bellator calls. So, that's a tough loss. And then he has that big loss in LFA. So really, I mean, from from a fight perspective, that's why I like this fight so much, because this is a perfect opponent for Marty. It's a perfect opponent for Darren. But what's cool about this is not a pro debut type of fight for either one of these guys, man. This is a monster fight. And I love when our champions go pro on our show, because they've already proven that at the amateur level, they can beat most of those guys. Right. They're the champ for a reason. So they're ready for that next step. And normally you wouldn't see on our show, I don't know if I've ever had a pro debut be a co-main event. Mm-hmm. And I have it on both nights. That's how big these co-main events are, but not from a record perspective, if that makes sense.
No, definitely. If you look at their amateur and, you see that this is the matchup to make, definitely, I got you for sure on that one. And we're also going to see the return of Tyler Scott against Sejo Amazaki and Amazaki Dojo. It's one of the dojos here in Chicagoland area. And Tyler Scott, who's now 1-1, he's fought for you guys before as well, fought Trace Angeckles. So what do you expect from this matchup in the lightweight division?
So sometimes a matchup falls in my lap, honestly, and this one did, because I guess Tyler, well, they both are basically gym owners. Tyler's a co-owner of Dominion, and right. And obviously Amazaki has his dojo. And so Tyler, he hits me up and he says, "Look, man, we got two gym owners in virtually the same area. We've been talking about fighting for years. We love the platform. If you can make it happen, that'd be great." And I love that, man. They've already talked about fighting. It's been brewing for years. They have kind of a vested interest in repping their own gyms and their own teams. I love it, man. And I think, and I also think it's a good move for where they're at in their pro careers. It's kind of like dead even, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think that's an interesting fight. I think they both have like the similar, background and stuff, like experience as well. So I think that's a great one.
Yeah.
And then we have Pierre Walters, he's taking on Eric Lorenz. And of course, Pierre Walters, he's 3-1. I mean, he's competed at HFC before. That's one of the more promotions that you've seen him recently. Also LFA. And against Eric Lorenz, again, this is another great fight in the light heavyweight division.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's hard not to be a fanboy. Anytime you get a former NFL player stepping in your cage, that's cool. And I watched his interview that he did as well with some other guys, and he's just a really down-to-earth, humble, cool dude. But I could tell when he fights, that switch turns on. This is a really unique fight, man, because Eric Lorenz, I'm a big fan of Hard Drive. They were one of the few gyms in my early days that gave me a chance. When I first got into this, and you got to earn that trust and respect. And Keone and those guys really welcomed me to their gym and to promote their fighters. So they produced a lot of great talent out of there. Well, not very often do I hear Eric Koch say, "We have a guy he's our next guy out of our gym to be a world champion. He's our next guy to make it to the UFC. He's the real deal." And they're talking about Alec. Now, Alec, all of his fights have been like a minute or less. He goes in, and he's such a heavy-handed striker, which is so perfect for Pierre. And I was actually a little reluctant when I offered this fight, because I'm thinking, man, Pierre's got 4 professional fights. He's been under these big lights. He knows what that feels like, and he's going to be more comfortable. Is this really a pro debut type of fight for Alec? And their response was, hell yes, we want this fight. We can't wait to make a name off somebody like Pierre.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, when you have that level of confidence at such a young age, and your coaches, and not just coaches, man, like UFC veterans, and Keone was in the RFA, like legitimate coaches saying, yes, we want this fight, and this guy's the real deal, man, it gives me goosebumps. I love that fight.
Yeah, definitely. That's going to be a really exciting fight. And that's just day one, and then you're going to have a day 2 event as well. So, I mean, obviously you guys are always bringing some of the great fights here at Cage Fanatic. I mean, for Caged Aggression, you guys are really stacking each card every chance you get. So, talk about that, really stacking those cards up.
You know, I think we talked last time, this COVID thing, in some weird way, it really forced us out of our comfort zone. So we had to build the pay-per-view platform, you know, to help try to make up some of the missing seats that we used to have, to help the fighters generate more money from their fans. I mean, there's still a lot of people that aren't comfortable going out, but they still want to support their favorite fighters. So building that pay-per-view platform has been really big to keep us going, but it's also really opened the doors to all these other gyms throughout the country. And I've had some relationships with them, but not like I do now. And I think that I earned a different level of respect by still trying to provide opportunities, and still, you know, nobody's getting rich around here right now with all this, but I still believe our incentives are great. We are big about like trying to take care of the fighters as much as we possibly can. And I think when they come, you know, from far away and they fight for us and they get to kind of go through the whole experience that we try to provide, then they see what we're talking about, or they see what other fighters are talking about. We're really trying at all costs to still put on quality events, quality matchups, provide opportunities. I think I did the math, man, and when we get done on Saturday, since they opened the doors again for us last September, we've been able to showcase 213 different fighters from 36 different gyms and 22 different states over the last 5 shows. And man, that's just incredible.
Yeah, congratulations on that. That's quite an accomplishment, especially during these times, you know?
Yeah, it's been great, man. So really, in a backwards way, it did force us out of our comfort zone and open up a lot of doors and a lot of new relationships.
For sure. And then any other fights that you're interested in talking about that we haven't covered yet?
Yeah, we've got an amateur fight that, especially if you're familiar with the caged aggression scene, we've got a kind of a bad blood fight where at the last few events, these guys have been kind of calling each other out when they get on the mic. Tyler DeHaven and Caleb Gall on night number 1. And man, these guys are both really, really tough amateurs. And there's been kind of this, like, you know how social media gets, like these call outs and all this stuff. But when they did it at the show after their victory, they each won their own fight, and they're doing their interview, and they both kind of called each other out. And it's been brewing to a point where, you know, as a fan, obviously I'm excited, you know, to see that, because that's going to be one of those fights where if you're in the crowd and you didn't know it was amateur, you wouldn't know. You know, they're really, really technical kids. I shouldn't even call them kids. But I'm also really excited about, we've got, again, a handful of new Wisconsin guys coming in. And man, if there's one thing I learned through this whole thing, is Wisconsin has a ridiculous MMA scene, and countless gyms and promotions, and they're talented and they're committed, and they bring the fight, and they're professional dudes. And I've loved working with them. I've loved working with all the gyms in Wisconsin. And so we grabbed, you know, another handful of guys from different gyms, and I'm excited to showcase them. We've got, I think it was, the total was like 9 different states coming to compete on this one. And that's cool, man. It's really cool to, you may not know, but we started in a little pole barn, just kind of getting our feet wet, like, you know, maybe we could do something cool with this. And now to talk to guys like in the UFC and to bring all these different, it's just awesome. Yeah.
For sure. And then another fighter is, I hadn't talked to him yet, but I will be tomorrow, Danny Sokolowski, Tyus White. And Soko, we haven't seen him fight for over a decade, you know, well over a decade. He's a gym owner as well. So, you know, talk about that. Tyus White comes from Pure Vita MMA, you know, highly touted as well. And it's a flyweight division fight.
I have a really good relationship with Jake, and you know, trying to spread around opportunities. I talked to him about May, and I said, all right, so who's on your priority list? Who's top priority? And he said Tyus. He needs to get him back in there and keep him active. And it would kind of like same thing with Soko. He, you know, we've been talking about him fighting for us for a while now, and nothing was really coming together. I was getting really close to the end of the cards, and I still had both of those guys open because I never paid attention. I use a database with weight classes, so I'd never mix the two. Tyus is a flyweight and Daniel is a bantamweight. So it never crossed my mind. Right. And on paper, it doesn't look the best because I want to say like 10 of Daniel's wins are before they were sanctioning him. So he's got all these pro fights under his belt and on his resume that people don't know about. So if you look at just strictly current times on paper, it doesn't look like the best fight, but you got mountains of experience dating 20 years back, fighting still fairly a newer guy to the game. So to me, that balances things out. And Tyus is moving up to 135. So Daniel will have a little bit of size on him. And yeah, I love it, man. It's another one of those exciting fights where, what do you got two Wisconsin guys fighting in Iowa for? Because of the current times, it makes sense.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, normally we would see that at a Pure FC or the Chosen Few championship. But yeah, that definitely makes sense. And listen, that just brings, the appeal, people will buy the pay-per-views and travel if they can to come see the fight. So are you at full capacity now?
No, we're still at the restricted. Iowa, it's weird. It's weird because the Iowa governor lifted those restrictions, but the city still isn't. Oh, I guess. And that's a whole nother battle, man. So I believe that this is going to be the last event where we're so restricted. But I'm going to take the summer off just because this will be 11 nights of fights in 8 months. And I think just across the board for the area, for my family, we're going to take a little break. And I'm excited for these shows to open back up. I want to start going to some of these other shows. And I know these gyms need to, these promotions need to happen. These guys need to fight closer to home and need to get some normalcy so they can feed back to their gyms and all that stuff that it takes.
Right. Yeah. Hopefully we'll get back to that. And I would love to come out for your event one day.
Yeah, man. I would love to have you for sure.
Yeah, especially when you said you might have full capacity, that'd be amazing as well. And just talk about that also with the precautions and, it's just a headache, but, with the times as they are, this is what we have to do, right?
Yeah, it gets harder and harder because you look at Florida, who UFC just had 15,000. Texas Rangers are playing ball in front of 40,000. Heck, the bar down the road from my venue, they just had a party, and one of the guys in the music world said he went there and they were elbow to elbow, no masks. And I mean, they're down the road from my venue. So the problem is it gets frustrating because I'm like, how is this even possible that we're so restricted yet, there's 15,000 down there. But I keep that mentality that a lot of states are still zero, man. So my restrictions are still better than nothing.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm trying to stay positive and humble, but you can't help but wonder, man, like what would have March been if we didn't have restrictions? Right. What would make? I've been churning down ticket sales on Friday night for May for about a week, and I mean, what would it have been? Right. So that it's hard not to think about that, but just trying to stay positive.
Definitely. I mean, are you friends with some of the promoters in the Midwest? Like, I know the Vales there in Indiana, and and have they been looking at your event to see like what you're doing?
As a matter of fact, I tried to talk Jake into making his next event a 2-nighter, but I got trumped on that. He said, I said, just do it, man. They are dying for MMA in these states that have been shut down. Yeah. They're literally dying for it. So, but I think this is going to be my 14th 2-night event. I think I'm just nuts because one night is enough. And when I talk to these promoters, they're like, man, you're crazy. I'm not doing 2 nights, but no, I'm excited for him to open back up. I know that he was talking about doing pay-per-view, so I think we're kind of maybe setting a little bit of a trend there. But in order for it to work, it needs to be quality, and it needs to have. I really think the fighters need to get a percentage of those buys. I think that's absolutely crucial. At the end of the day, that's who's buying the pay-per-view is one of their fans, so they should be getting a piece of that pie.
Yeah, and you guys had an event where there was a lot of regional MMA going on that weekend. I don't know if you saw like Trident Fights going on, XFC, Young on, and So how do you feel? Do you ever think like, oh, how did my event do stack up against those events? Do you ever think about that? Or
well, actually, I've got a picture, man, and I'll never forget this because remember, I just got into this as a fan. So a buddy of mine sent a pic. He posted a picture that said, "Is this heaven?" And he had 2 big screen TVs. He had some beer and he had some food, and he had the UFC on one TV and our show on the other one. And man, I gotta tell you that feels good. It felt really cool.
Yeah, for sure. And it's good to see, more of that stuff. Like we saw, like Trying Fights, they went all the way to Florida, and they're very much a New York promotion as well, So
yeah, and I think last I heard, is it WXC? Eric's coming to Des Moines. I think at the end of May. I haven't seen much more on that, but I did see an announcement. I haven't seen much more, but yeah, man. I mean, these promotions willing to take the risks and travel and do whatever you can to keep these things going. I respect the hell out of that. That's what I've been trying to do. So it takes a lot of extra work, and actually it takes a lot of extra work for a lot less reward, especially financially. But I feel rewarded. I feel pretty rewarded that we got through all these events.
For sure. And then also we have the Elite Amateur Fight League, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with. They're going to be out in Indiana. Do you ever look at those shows to see like, hey, I'd like to bring these guys to my promotion, make a pro debut or whatnot after the season's over?
Yeah, for sure. That's where I learned about Tyler Scott. And I actually had some talks a few years back with Jesse about hosting one of them. It's just where we struggled was they partner up with a promotion that's already running, and then they basically put those cards on the undercard of one of those shows. The problem is, back when we talked, I was so heavily dependent on local ticket sales.
Right.
And that's a real struggle with this business before pay-per-view and COVID and everything, is like, if you have virtually your whole show is from out of town, who's going to fill the seats, and how many hotels can you really pay for and all this? But I'm telling you, man, in March, I feel like it was a 90-10 ratio. We had 10% locals and 90% from everywhere else, and we made it work. We sold out this hotel that's got like 200 rooms because of the pay-per-view and because of those other areas where we can help generate money to pay for the show. So now I'm learning that we're not so heavily dependent on local fighters. And that's, as much as I love working with them, to me, it's got to be a good matchup. So just because you're local, if it's not a good matchup, I'm going to try to pick matchup over ticket sales now, because we have other avenues to generate money, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely it does. And I mean, and then I have to imagine it is tough, running that locker room or getting the fights ready, and then having to do with the COVID. Like, you have to be the bad guy. Put your mask on, after the celebration. They don't want to hear that, right?
Well, especially, I mean, let's be real. Everybody's got their own. Everybody's got their own opinion of all these things going on, right. And I really do try to keep my opinions out of the public eye, because it doesn't matter what you say. Somebody disagrees with it. That's just the world we live in.
Sure.
So I try to keep it about the event and about the fights. Right. But yeah, I had to jump through so many hoops, and I'm the ringleader. So the venue and the city, and they're all like, well, what's Mike doing? Because if Mike's not doing it, then nobody's going to follow the lead.
Right.
So I did, man. I had to always make sure it was on and ask the guys and girls, like, and again, I try not to get into opinions, but like, yeah, you know how it is, man. It's like, I give you a perfect example. So like, our venue right now is actually holding court. Like, the courthouse is closed, so they're having actual court in our venue. And then I go, so the courthouse is big. So, and the way they have it spaced out at the venue, it's basically the same. So I'm like, so is the courthouse deadly, but the venue's safe? You know what I mean? There's all those weird things that make no logical sense. So it really sucked. That part was hard, making me tell all these people things that I didn't really believe in. Right. But like I told them, if this is what we have to do to continue doing these events and do what we love, let's just do it.
For sure. Yeah. And then another thing was like the outdoor, you know, we're going to have summer outdoor. You think that's a possibility in the future? I mean, obviously you're taking this summer off, but you know, maybe in the fall, have an outdoor event because, you know, we're seeing that happen, and then you could have more capacity.
Sure. I'm hoping in the fall that we open back up. I really am, because I'm not a big fan of the outdoor events. A couple reasons. You always have that worry of weather all the way until showtime, and you put all this work into it, and then the rain or whatever, wind. But probably the more important reason is I really like to kill the house lights and put on a show. Right. And I feel like we lose a lot of that production value and that presentation when we do it outside.
Definitely. No, I definitely got your point on that one. And Mike, I appreciate you again taking time to be on a Fight Report. I know you have a busy fight week. So what's your go-to? How do you stay awake, man? How do you keep yourself ready?
Oh man, I do drink a lot of coffee. I try to go to the gym so that my cardio is good. No, I tell everybody this, man. It's a ton of work, but when everything comes together on fight night and I'm sitting there, and I mean, I literally start from scratch and build an event, build a theme, build everything, build the card. And to see it all come together on fight night, man, there's no feeling like it in the world. So to me, it's worth all the hard work.
Definitely. Well, we appreciate you being on the Fight Report, and I'm going to tell everybody to check it out right now. Caged Aggression 31 Chain Reaction. Make sure to check it out May 7th and May 8th from Davenport, Iowa, in the same venue. And excited for this one. Make sure to go to CagedAggressionMMA.com. CagedAggressionMMA.tv, I believe, to order the pay-per-view, and you can select your favorite fighter so that that way they get some revenue as well. And then also you've got those awards, which are really cool as well.
Yeah, it's you know, the little things, man. The little things are very important, and I want fighters to come here and have a good experience. Unfortunately, half of them have to lose. Nobody likes to lose, but at least, you know, if you have a good experience fighting for us and being a part of the weekend, then maybe it lessens the blow a little bit.
Definitely. Well, we appreciate watching, you know, talking to you. We'll be watching the pay-per-view event. We have you from here, and I hope you have the best fight nights you possibly can. I hope it's another great success. Caged Aggression 31 Chain Reaction, 2-night event. Everybody check it out May 7th, May 8th. This weekend, another great event. My Goodwin, of course, Caged Aggression president or promoter, however you want to, you know, whatever title you want to take, it's yours, man.
No, I appreciate it, man. Thanks again for having me on. Like I said last time, you talked to the big dogs in the sport, so taking time for me to do that, I very, very much appreciate it.
Oh, anytime, brother. Take care. Have a good one.
Yep, you too, man.